we are here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This part is where Bali Maharaj has now gone through the story has gone on of Vamanadev, and now Bali Maharaj, this is the end of the story where Bali Maharaj is now entering into the planet Sutala. This is by the order of the Lord, after he has been, after he's been arrested and everything has happened with Vamanadev taking the 3 steps of land, and all that whole pastime has happened. And then Prahlad Maharaj, who is his grandfather, comes to see what is happening. And in this beginning of this chapter, Prahlad Maharaj is glorifying the Supreme Lord for creating the material world, for being equal to everyone, being liberal to the devotees, and being kind to the demons as well. So this is very fitting for Prahlad Maharaj to say, knowing his story of Lord Nrsingadev, but this is later in his life as an older person, the grandfather of Bali Maharaj. So let's look at this verse, the second verse, the text 10, and let's see some of the components of the purport here. So first of all, Srila Prabhupada talks about karma bandha, the bondage of fruitive activities, entails the repetition of birth and death. One performs fruitive activities in such a way that he creates another body for his next life. So the bondage of fruitive activities, this seems to be a common theme in different stories of the Srimad Bhagavatam, or that we see in just in general in spiritual life, that how to become free from the bondage of our activities, karma. So karma is a very interesting topic because it's so complicated and complex, but Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas have actually simplified it in a very nice way. So for the first verse that I wanted to go to that describes something regarding karma bandha is in the 4th canto, 25th chapter and the 5th verse. And this is talking about Narad Muni's conversation with King Prachina Barhishat, who is the father of the Prachetas. As we know, the Prachetas, they performed austerities and things like that. So their father was instructed by Narad Muni. And so King Prachina Barhishat says to Narad Muni, "O great soul Narada, my intelligence is entangled in fruitive activities. Therefore, I do not know the ultimate goal of life. Kindly instruct me in pure knowledge so that I can get out of the entanglement of fruitive activities." So he's asking Narad Muni, please instruct me. So Srila Prabhupada talks in the purport, a beautiful purport, where he says, Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung, Satsanga chhadi kainu asate vilas te karana lagila ye karma bandha fas. He actually quotes this a number of times in his writings. As long as a person is entangled in fruitive activities, he is bound to accept one body after another. This is called karma bandha fas, entanglement in fruitive activities. It does not, now here's a key point. It does not matter whether one is engaged in pious or impious activities, for both are causes for further entanglement in material bodies. So we know that from reading the Bhagavad Gita, that there are different activities, pious and impious activities, and they both actually bind the living entity in karma, in the karmic reactions. You get reactions from your good activities, and you get reactions from your impious or bad activities. So reading on, by pious activities, one can take birth in a rich family and get a good education and a beautiful body. But this does not mean that the distresses of life are ultimately eliminated. So we can do good activities and then get good karma in our next lives. We can get a good birth, we can get a good body, we can get riches, we can get fame, we can get all these things. But that does not mean that we won't suffer. Suffering always has to be there, whether you have done good activities or bad activities. In the Western countries, it is not unusual for one to take birth in a rich aristocratic family. Nor is it unusual for one to have a good education and a very beautiful body. But this does not mean that Westerners are free from the distresses of life. Although at the present moment, the younger generation in Western countries are sufficient education, beauty, and wealth, Although there is enough food, clothing, and facilities for sense gratification, they are in distress. Indeed, they are so distressed that they become hippies, and the laws of nature force them to accept a wretched life. They go about unclean and without shelter or food and are forced to sleep in the street. Then he goes on to talk about birth, death, old age, and disease. The conclusion is that one cannot be happy by simply executing pious or impious activities. Such activities simply cause entanglement and transmigrate one from one body to another. Narottam Das Thakur calls this karma bandha. So the point is that whether you perform good activities or bad activities, you will still continue to go on from one life to another, suffering birth, death, old age, and disease, as we've always heard it. So now King Prachina Parishad is asking Narad Muni, how can I get free from this? He's approaching Narad Muni, who is a self-realized soul. How can I get free from this? So he says, King Prachina Parishad admitted this fact, the fact that he was entangled in fruitive activities, being a king and whatnot, and frankly asked Narad Muni how he could get out of this karma bandha fas, entanglement in fruitive activities. So now here's another point. This is actually the stage of knowledge indicated in the first verse of the Vedanta Sutta, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. So this is another huge point, that when one becomes frustrated with material life and with constantly going through the cycle of birth and death, then one inquires unto who I really am. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. This is the first part of the Vedanta Sutra. Who am I? Let's inquire into Brahman. Brahman, inquiring into our actual position of who we are. So then Prabhupada says, when one actually reaches the platform of frustration in an attempt to discharge karma bandha fas, he inquires about the real value of life, which is called Brahma Jigyasa. Like I said, when one is frustrated by actually doing fruitive activities, then one inquires about, why am I here? What am I doing? We see this over and over again in our, in our modern Krishna consciousness, devotees. How did you come to Krishna consciousness? A lot of times it's because people are frustrated, or they're looking for something else, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, artu artarti jigyasu jnana, those types of people who actually surrender unto the Lord, or who actually try to think of some higher purpose in life. Who are those type of people? They're looking for money, they're looking for they're suffering, or they are actually looking for the higher looking for God. So then he says, and Prabhupada said, as we read in the purport, about the hippies. So I'm actually reading this book by Jadurani Devi Dasi. This is her memoir, The Artist's Spiritual Life. And she's talking about how she actually came into touch with Srila Prabhupada, which is a really, really cool story. I'll tell you in short. She grew up in the Bronx, and she basically was going to art school, and she was just frustrated because no one could, she wasn't sure like what this life was about. Was it like just this one life and you die and that's it? So then she made her way to the East Village, where all the hippies were. As Prabhupada mentioned here, in Western countries, we have everything. They had everything: education, beauty, money, everything. But they had to become hippies because they still were distressed about what is this life. So anyways, she was talking about how she went to Lower East Side, and she worked for like the whole summer and made all this money. And she took this money and she was going to buy some drugs, and then sell the drugs and make a profit, and then be able to support her art school. So then she went to this one man, and this drug dealer, and she said, okay, I have the money, and come give me the drugs. And the man said, oh, it's upstairs. I will give me the money and I'll bring it down to you. So he took them. She's like, okay. So she gave the money, and he went upstairs, and for an hour she was waiting out there, and she's like yelling like, hey, come down, give me the drugs or whatever, and someone said, oh, he went out the back. And basically he stole all that money that she had taken, that she had worked so hard to earn, and she had just been robbed basically. And she was so incredibly frustrated. Like she was like, so it was like the last straw. She was like so frustrated. And then she was going to visit her boyfriend just immediately after. And so she was walking through Tompkins Square Park, and she heard some sounds, and she describes it so beautifully and with so much detail in this book. I really highly recommend this book. So she was walking through Tompkins Square Park, and she heard some sound, and she's like, what is that? So she went, and as we all know, Srila Prabhupada was there chanting under the tree with all the devotees. And she was like, what is this? And then she didn't even go to visit her boyfriend. Like she followed Prabhupada back to 26 2nd Avenue, and she basically tells about her story of how she joined, and she was going to get people were saying like, you should get initiated, and she didn't have any idea about what any of this was. So anyway, she gets initiated, and that's also an amazing story. But the point is here, as Srila Prabhupada says further, in order to inquire about the ultimate goal of life, the Vedas enjoin tad vigyartam sa gurum eva bigachet. In order to understand the transcendental science, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. Now, this is the point, that there's a certain flow here, that when one is in karma bandha, one is in the fruitive, performing fruitive activities, then one gets frustrated, and then once one should inquire about the self, atato rama jigyasa, and then further from that, tad vigyartam sa gurum eva vigachet, that inquiring about oneself, one should actually approach a spiritual master to understand the answers of life, that who am I? What is my purpose here? And here in the story of Jadurani Mataji, we see that flow. She was frustrated. She didn't know what life was about, even though she had the question of what is life about, but she was frustrated by her material, activities. And then ultimately she meets Srila Prabhupada and surrenders unto him. So let's talk a little bit about let's continue this purport. King Prachanda Barishad found the best spiritual master, Narad Muni, and he therefore asked him that knowledge by which one can get out of the entanglement of karma bandha fas, fruitive activities. This is the actual business of human life. Jivasya tattva jigyasa nartha yaschiha karmabi. As stated in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, a human being's only business is inquiring from a bona fide spiritual master about extrication from the entanglement of karma bandha fas. So he's saying that the only goal of a human being should be to inquire about how to be free from the cycle of birth and death. And how does one do that? One has to approach a spiritual master. So let's look at this verse that Srila Prabhupada's quoting. When you read a purport of Prabhupada, he always quotes another verse, and you can go into that verse and then further kind of break down the points. And then within that verse that he quoted previously, then there's another verse. So let's look at 1 to 10. This is in the 1st canto. Now, the 1st canto is very interesting because Srila Prabhupada actually wrote the 1st canto before he came to America. So he didn't know how long he had. So he actually put so much energy and so much of the, essence of all the Srimad Bhagavatam into the 1st canto purports. So these purports are just really beautiful. So this is 1 to 10. Life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant for inquiry into the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's work. So this is also, another great verse in the second chapter of the first canto. Now let's look a few points from the purport. The completely bewildered material civilization is wrongly directed towards the fulfillment of desires in sense gratification. In such civilization, in all spheres of life, the ultimate end is sense gratification. In politics, social service, altruism, philanthropy, and ultimately in religion or even in salvation, the very same dint of sense gratification is ever increasingly predominant. So then he goes on to talk about in politics, leaders and men fight with one another to fulfill their personal sense gratification. The point he's making is that sense gratification is always the underlying goal of the materialists. In material life, the end goal is always sense gratification. Even in philanthropy, altruism, all these different things, the ultimate goal is to gratify one's senses, whether it's like in a subtle way or in a gross way. So Srimad Bhagavatam says one should not live for sense gratification. He says one should satisfy the senses only in so much as required for self-preservation and not for sense gratification. Because the body is made of senses, which require a certain amount of sense gratification, there are regulated directions for the satisfaction of the senses. Then he talks about marriage, he talks about family, that these are things that are allowed to keep the body and soul together. As he said, there are certain things that are needed for the body in regards to sense gratification. So let's look at further the karma, because the activities. So Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas actually talk about the different types of karmas. So let's look at Ishopanishad. The Ishopanishad is a wonderful book, and it talks about work. So this is the Ishopanishad, verse 2. One may aspire to live for hundreds of years if he continuously goes on working in that way, for that sort of work will not bind him to the law of karma. There's no alternative to this way for man. So there are three types of karma. Srila Prabhupada describes, it's also described in the Bhagavad Gita, as we know. Karma, akarma, and vikarma is very clearly described in the Bhagavad Gita. Actions that are performed in terms of one's prescribed duties, as mentioned in the revealed scriptures, are called karma. Actions that free one from the cycle of birth and death are called akarma. And actions that are performed through the misuse of one's freedom that direct one to the lower life forms are called vikarma. Of these three types of action, that which frees one from the bondage of karma is preferred by intelligent men. So what are these activities? These are the activities of devotional service. These are called akarma. These do not actually make any karmic reactions. They actually destroy karmic reactions. Ordinary men wish to perform good work in order to be recognized and achieve some higher status of life in this world or in heaven. That's sense gratification. But more advanced men want to be free altogether from the actions and reactions of work. Intelligent men well know that both good and bad work equally bind one to material miseries. Consequently, they seek that work which will free them from the reactions of both good and bad work. Such liberating work is described here in the pages of Ishopanishad. So basically, they're making the same point as previously in the previous verses that I quoted, that activities need to be performed. If one is intelligent, activities need to be performed that don't bind one to this material world. Activities need to be performed that free one from the bondage of our, this material world and of miseries. Okay, so then he talks about factually, this is a very important point. Factually, no one has to do anything more than render devotional service to the Lord. However, in the lower stages of life, one cannot immediately adopt the activities of devotional service, nor one can completely stop fruitive work. A conditioned soul is accustomed to working for sense gratification, for his own selfish interest, immediate or extended. So let's break this point down. So one devotional service ideally is what we should always be performing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But we are not at that point yet where we can constantly devote our time to doing that. Therefore, one has to work for Krishna, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, work in a way that we dovetail our activities toward Krishna, or do our activities for Krishna, just as Krishna advised Arjuna to do. And he says here, a conditioned soul is accustomed to working for sense gratification. This has been our situation from time immemorial. Life after life, we are constantly performing activities that bind us. So how do we think that in such a short span of time, we're going to be like, okay, now I'm only performing my activities, I will perform only devotional activities. This is like, wishful thinking in some sort of way. As the example is, when a fan is going, when you unplug the fan is still continuing to turn. It's not that immediately it stops. So we have to continually we actually have to perform our activities for Krishna if we can't fully engage ourselves in hearing and chanting. So then he says, an ordinary man works for his own sense gratification. But when this principle of sense enjoyment is extended to include his society, nation, or humanity in general, it assumes various attractive names such as altruism, socialism, communism, nationalism, and humanitarianism. These isms are certainly very attractive forms of karma bandhana, karmic bondage. So this is a very heavy point, that these altruistic activities, whether it be communism, humanitarianism, these are actually extended sense gratification. Of course, we may seem like, okay, these are wonderful things that we should be, devoting all our time to, but this is actually not what Srila Prabhupada is saying here. These are actually extended forms of how we can make ourselves feel better about our lives, and we can have our own sense gratification for this. The Vedic instruction of Shri Upanishad is that if one actually wants to live for any of the above isms, he should make them God-centered. There is no harm in becoming a family man, or an altruist or socialist or communist, a nationalist or humanitarian, provided that one executes his activities in relation with Ishavasya, the God-centered conception. So he says there's no harm in becoming a humanitarian, but we should perform this humanitarianism having Krishna in the center, connecting people with Krishna, showing people how they can end this karma bandha, end this constant cycle of birth and death that they're stuck in, that we are stuck in. Then we can actually say that this is something that is not for our own sense gratification, but is for Krishna. As it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, all these different occupational duties, if they do not develop attraction for Krishna, they're actually a waste of time. There's a very famous verse. I don't remember the verse at the moment, but that is what the verse says. Going on to this purport. Yes, in Bhagavad Gita 240, the Lord Krishna states that God-centered activities are so valuable that just a few of them can save a person from the greatest danger. The greatest danger of life is danger of gliding down again to the evolutionary cycle of birth and death among the 8.4 million species. If some or other a man misses the spiritual opportunity offered by his human form of life and falls down again into the evolutionary cycle, he must be considered most unfortunate. This is a very sobering point. This lifetime that we have to use it for understanding these higher topics and for getting free from this cycle of birth and death. How do we get free from that? Now, the point of that, like I said, that flow, that, okay, we are performing material activities, we become frustrated with them, we see that in so many examples, and then what do we do? Tasmat gurum prapaditya jagyashishya uttamam, or tad vigyartam sagurum eva bigachet. We have to inquire from a spiritual master how we can develop our how we can essentially get free from this. So let's look at very briefly let's talk a little bit about the guru. One, he's saying here that the greatest danger of life is that we glide back into these 8,400,000 species of life if we don't inquire about how we can get free from this samsara, this cycle of birth and death. So one must approach a spiritual master. Tadvidi pranipatina pariprashnena seva. It says in the Bhagavad Gita that one must approach a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, ask questions, serve him, and then this realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. And we see so many times, like in the story of Jadurani Mataji, that she approached Srila Prabhupada, inquired from him, served him, and then you see her now. She's an amazing devotee, and she's actually able to instruct others even about the goal of life. So if you do not have someone like this in your life, you should think very deeply. Why don't you? Is there something blocking that? We should all try to approach someone, a spiritual master, inquire from them, and then understand about spiritual topics and how we can be freed from this karma bandha. Now, in the initial verse of the 8th canto that I'm speaking on, in the purport, then Prabhupada talks about the Kanishta Adhikari. The Kanishta or neophyte devotee is therefore advised to visit the temple every day and see the form of the Lord regularly. So let's talk a little bit about the Kanishta Adhikari. What is the Kanishta Adhikari? So it describes in the Nectar of Instruction in the text 5 that one should mentally honor the devotee who chants the holy name of the Lord. One should offer humble obeisance to the devotee who has undergone spiritual initiation and is engaged in worshiping the deity. And one should associate with and faithfully serve that pure devotee who is advanced in undeviated devotional service and whose heart is completely devoid of the propensity to criticize others. So this is describing Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari. Kanishta means the neophyte stage. Madhyama means the middle stage, the intermediate stage, and Uttamadhikari, the highest devotee. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about these 3 stages. Let's hone in on the Kanishta Adhikari because that's what was in the initial purport or initial verse. One should not remain a Kanishta Adhikari, one who is situated at the lowest platform in devotional service and is interested only in worshiping the deity in the temple. Such a devotee is described in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. A person who is very faithfully engaged in the worship of the deity in the temple, but who does not know how to behave towards devotees or people in general is called a Prakrita Bhakta or Kanishta Adhikari. So this is a very important point, that the Kanishta Adhikari only is interested in seeing the Lord in the temple and does not actually understand that the Lord is present everywhere else, especially in the hearts of the devotees. So he actually misbehaves towards the devotees. So Prabhupada is saying here that one should not continue to be a Kanishta Adhikari. One should come to the Madhyama stage. One should understand that the Lord is within the hearts of everyone, not just in the temple. And one should treat others with respect. One should treat the devotees especially with respect. Not especially, but everyone. And one should come up to the higher platform. So then he continues to say, one therefore has to raise himself from the position of the Kanishta Adhikari to the platform of Madhyama Adhikari. The Madhyama Adhikari described in Srimad Bhagavatam in this way. Now this is from the 11th canto. The Madhyama Adhikari is a devotee who worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the highest object of love, makes friends with the Lord's devotees, is merciful to the ignorant, and avoids those who are envious by nature. So The Madhyama Adhikari knows how to deal with the different types of people. He is merciful towards those who are new to devotional life. He makes friends with his peers in devotional life, and he knows that those who are higher, the Uttama Adhikaris, he takes shelter of them. So one has to come to that stage. So the initial verse says, so the Kanishya Adhikari is therefore advised to visit the temple every day and see the form of the Lord regularly. Thus, the neophyte devotee can be freed from the bondage of fruitive activities. This is the beginning stage that we understand. By devotional service, one can be freed from the bondage of fruitive activities. This is the beginning stage. The further stages are to develop one's Shravanam, Kirtanam, these directly devotional activities. Of course, it is not that one who goes to the temple every day is considered a Kanishta Adhikari. This is not the understanding. But the point that Srila Prabhupada I believe is trying to make here is that when one is initially in devotional life, then one should come to the temple and understand their position. Understand that I am a devotee, I am a spirit soul, and my activities can be purified. I can purify myself and my activities by engaging in devotional service. And further from that is that we should always try to perform these devotional activities as much as we can. So in conclusion, I would say that this activities of karma bandha, the fruitive activities that we perform at all times, we should try to direct these activities and make them more Krishna-centered, God-centered. And whether one is a family person, one should, or one is single, or one is, a retired life, we should, in every stage of life, one has to perform activities for the satisfaction of Krishna. And in our case, as sadhakas, perform for the satisfaction of our guru, because in whose relation we are related to the Lord. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado, that if the guru is pleased, then Krishna is pleased. So I would say that try to perform your activities with that state of mind and with that goal in mind and with that motivation, because it's all about this, our sincerity. Sincerity is invincible. If our sincerity is there, then we are invincible when it comes to spiritual life. So try to become sincere. I am myself trying to become sincere always on a daily basis. We should reassess our situations in devotional life. So thank you. I want to open it up for any questions or comments. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
So nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Wonderful class, beautiful, fantastic. Your spiritual master is empowering you.
Thank you.
We dare to mention that how wonderful is Krishna, that he's the one who's arranging this, that even if we're not on the highest level, he's giving us access to advance. He's giving us a process, he's giving us association, he's giving us instruction. Krishna, we're here to glorify Krishna. And the process you describe very carefully and thoroughly and wonderfully. But we just want to mention directly Krishna is very wonderful. And thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Krishna,
Yeah.
for the association of Namarasa Prabhu and the devotees and the holy name and devotional service, the life of the soul.
Check.
We fill our life with devotional service. And this is, although an advanced stage is possible, that the Guru is calling us to this, that he's leading us toward this, that he's guiding us to this, he's urging us toward this. And it's based on our desire. When I say, Lord, I am what I am, I'm where I am, but I want to give myself to you. As soon as we say that, even once in our life, Krishna will work on us. You're wonderful. How wonderful is Krishna?
Thank you. Theodora Prabhu, nice to see you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, nice to see you.
Hare Krishna.
Very good.
You know him? You know him?
Yeah, I know.
Yes, we know each other a long time ago.
Theodore's doing amazing devotional service.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other comments or questions?
Owen, you have any
No,
questions? or
everything
comments?
okay. I understand. You?
Yeah.
Okay.
Huh?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Nice class.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. No other questions or comments.
The desire to do act appropriately is what we have control over.
Exactly.
You
Yes.
know, and it's not difficult. And if you say, well, I really don't have a strong desire to be a devotee and to be a pure devotee, well, then desire that. You know, Jamunajai wants to say something.
Yes.
Oh no, sorry, my mic was on by accident.
Okay. No
Sorry.
problem. Okay.
How is your child?
Oh, he's good. They're good.
Yeah.
They're all fine. I'm just trying to raise them in a Krishna conscious way. It's a daunting task, but it's we can only try, like you said.
They get smarter and faster every day, you know.
Yes,
Hard to keep up with them. It's a great challenge.
it
Great
is.
challenge. And
It
Krishna will
is.
empower you.
Yes. I feel that if you surround them with devotional things, then they can only get good samskaras when they get older. The way I feel that my parents raised me in by we ate dinner together all the time, every day. I can't remember when we didn't. We did kirtan together. We worshiped the deities together and things like that. So as you get older, then you might go astray for a little while, but eventually you feel, I feel like I came back in a way because I remembered all those wonderful things that my parents did for me. And I think we all feel like that in some ways, that our parents helped us out. Yeah, so it's but the point I would say is chanting the holy name, and Srila Prabhupada really stressed that. We can do all kinds of devotional activities, but the underlying point should be that how can we become more attracted to chanting the holy name and helping others become attracted to chanting the holy name, because this is our saving grace. Becoming absorbed and understanding that we can associate with the Lord, we can associate with Krishna, and everything is there within the holy name.
Mm.
So we have to constantly get more attraction for chanting, and the way to do that is to continually to chant kirtaniya sadahari.
Remarkable
So
detail in this verse and purport is how the Bali Maharaj is going to Sutta, and the whole family's going.
yes,
Everybody, go on down there, and and go on in your worship of Krishna and your loving exchanges. It wasn't just like every man for himself in one
right.
sense. That when we engage in devotional service, the whole family benefits for generations in every direction.
Yeah, exactly.
How wonderful is Krishna.
Yes. Prahlad Maharaj he asked Nrsingadev to deliver his father, and Lord Nrsingadev said, already your generations before and after are delivered because you're devotee. So the best thing we can do for our families is to perform devotional service.
It's so consoling. Sometimes the family members feel, oh, he's going to the movement. He's going to Prabhupada. He's moving in the temple. He's moving away from us. I know my own family was saying that. And I used to tell my mother, Mom, when the Italian boy gets married, they say you didn't lose a son, you gained a daughter.
Right.
You haven't lost a son, you've gained the whole Hare Krishna movement as part of the family.
Yes, yes.
They're really delighted in meeting devotees.
Right.
I couldn't really preach to them, but even like young teenage devotees who would come, we'd bring them there, and the exchanges were amazing. I would just let me just be quiet.
Jadurani Mataji was saying in this book about how her parents were not so sure about her surrendering to Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada told her that first the birth is that the mother and father give birth. And then the Vedas actually, the guru becomes the mother is the guru, and the Vedas, and then they tell who the father is, and that's the guru. So she was consoled by that. Jai. Thank you, everyone.